Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. Today's Friday, August the 2nd, 2024. We're so glad that you've tuned in so that you can hear some practical advice how you can be a good steward with the things that God has trusted you to manage. So Financial Issues is a ministry that educates people about financial issues from a biblical worldview, because there's a lot of points of view in this world and everybody's got opinions, but we know that wisdom is found in the Word of God, and that's where our advice comes from. It's founded in the Word of God. We know that there is wisdom there, and we want to be good stewards, and we want you to be a good steward, so we're sharing that wisdom with you. If you want to find out more about our ministry and some very, very practical ways that you can be a good steward in the way that you invest, go to financialissues.org. Our stewardship verse today comes from Proverbs 27:23. It tells us to know well the condition of your flocks and give attention to your herds. So as much as we talk about not being consumed with spending every single moment looking at the markets and looking at your investments and, trying to decide whether you need to trade your stocks or, all of those things, we have to balance that. We don't want to be overly consumed with looking at those things on a too frequent basis, but we have to balance that with what the scripture tells us is wise to do, which is knowing the conditions of your herds and flocks. So, for most of us, we're not a farming society anymore, and we don't have herds of cows or, flocks of animals that we need to pay attention to. We have to translate that into what we have within our stewardship realm. So if it's investing, we're talking about stocks and bonds and companies and, different mutual funds and types of investments. So we have to know well what they're doing. We have to know how they're behaving. Is their business plan being executed? Is it working, or are they having success in the marketplace? Is their share price going up as a result of that? So, Seth, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, Shana, completely. We should not be obsessive about what we have, but I think God's people should know well what we have. We should be able to have a good knowledge of our assets, so that really we can steward them well for God's glory. And Shana, this topic I think leads to a frequently asked question we get on the show about where we should store what we have, specifically the question of banks versus credit unions. So, just to start, Shana, could you explain to our listeners the differences between a bank and a credit union?
Sure. That's a very practical thing. If we're going to if we're going to create an emergency fund where we're, not our investments, but our emergency fund where we need to store up some money for some times when we have to purchase things that we don't have enough in our regular operating account for, or if we have short-term goals, we need to have a practical way of doing that. And I would suggest that stuffing it under your mattress is not really a good option anymore. So, so we look at financial institutions, we look at banks, and then there are credit unions. When we're talking about where we're going to keep our operational money or our emergency money. So the real difference between banks and credit unions, there's quite a few, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is that one is not-for-profit, the other one exists for a profit. So most credit unions are nonprofit, most banking institutions are for-profit organizations. So banks have customers, credit unions have members. So you have to have something in common with a group of people that you're doing your banking services with so that they get a nonprofit status. In one in credit unions, the money stays really locally in the community. If it's a bank, it may be, a national bank, or it may be a regional bank, but, the money may not necessarily stay in the community. They're different, too, in the ways that they are protected. Banks are typically backed by what's widely known as FDIC insurance, so it's federally backed and insured from really from the institution being able to make your money just disappear. The credit unions are still protected, but they're not. Most of them do not fall under FDIC protection. They have a private insurance, most of them called NCUA, I believe is the name of it.
Yeah, and that backing there, Shana, that's typically about $250,000 per each account or for each member. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the limits run pretty well the same. It's $250,000 per person per account. So if you and your spouse are on an account together, you've got $500,000 under either system.
Yeah, nice. And Shana, what would be the advantages and disadvantages to both of these methods of holding our money?
There could be several. The ones that come to mind immediately for me is with a credit union. Because they are not nonprofit and you have to be a member of them, you tend to get lower loan rates than you do in traditional banks, and higher savings rates. So they pay better interest or higher interest a lot of times on CDs and savings account. The profit that the nonprofit credit unions make is used to help offset those costs of doing business. My personal experience, I found that credit unions are much more friendly. They're community oriented than banking institutions. Although, I guess banks could, if they're big banks or even if they're regional banks, they might have more branches, so they might have more places for you to do business. Rather than just having to go to your one location in your community. But even credit unions have sort of a network where they kind of work together. Yeah. And Shana, you kind of touched on this briefly earlier, but banks and credit unions, mostly we think about them in terms of savings, but how might we also use them for investing? Well, part of investing is you have fixed income investing. And one of the things that we have that we use in our strategy from time to time are CDs. So you can purchase CDs in your investment account, but you can also get them from your local bank or credit union. And I would say that banks and credit unions are primarily for your banking services. So for your loans, for your savings, for your short-term money. But I would really avoid banks and credit unions when they offer you investment advisors, because that's a very, very common practice, even for credit unions, that they have an investment advisor that is housed in their branch. So though they're not directly in banks, they may be directly employed by the bank. Credit unions, they might just be affiliated with an outside broker, but you can't. I would say that banking and doing CDs at a bank or a credit union is biblically responsible, but you can't be certain that those advisors that are in those branches actually know what biblically responsible investing is and or value biblically responsible investing. Yeah, so kind of taking all that information that we just learned, Shana, what would be the FISM recommendation for where to keep money? Do we as a ministry prefer one of these options over the other one? Well, personally, I certainly prefer credit unions by far over banking institutions. But, there are even Christian credit unions that support with the profit that they would make, that they support missions or things that are important to Christians. So that's one of the requirements of a credit union, is that you have to have some kind of common denominator. Like they have teacher credit unions, they have community credit unions, they have Christian credit unions, so on and so forth. Yeah. And how would you guide us as we consider the percentages of our assets we have in savings, whether it's a bank or a credit union, versus invested in equities? Is there a kind of a form or a rhyme or reason for too much or too little in savings versus investing? Well, you certainly want to be mindful of any limits that they have for protection. So whether that's FDIC or the NCUA protection of credit unions, you want to make sure that you're following the guidelines and not having any uninsured deposits on account with them. That was one of the things that really led to the the trouble that Silicon Valley Bank had. So, and you want to have no lazy money. So you want to keep your operational money, the money that you use to pay bills and do things on a short-term basis, in a bank or a credit union. And you could also have some of your short-term money there using the CDs and things like that, money that you have short-term goals for. But any investment dollars, you really need to make sure that you have no lazy money. So you don't want to have money that's just sitting around in a bank or credit union account that's earning very little when it could be deployed to earn more money for a future date.
Good reminder there. Yep.
I think that's about all we have time for
so.
right now. We're going to have to take a break, but we're going to come back with more financial issues after our break. We hope that you will stay tuned, and we've got some great information for you during the breaks. But if you want to find out more about our ministry, now's a good time to do it. Go to financialissues.org, and we'll be back in just a few short minutes.
I actually called the clinic thinking that it was an abortion clinic. I knew that at the time my partner wasn't going to be involved. I did want Suzette, but I was having financial problems. And I was like, I don't need an appointment. They're like, just come in and we'll help you. And so I went in, and yeah, that practically changed my life. I had not been sleeping, and I remember like being able to sleep that night because I knew that like something was gonna happen. I was able to carry Suzette full term and have her. I'm extremely happy that I did not get an abortion. I don't think I would be here today, or my daughter. I don't think I would ever sacrifice as much as I did, because I feel that I did it for her. And if it wasn't that people that supported me, I don't think I would have ever been here.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, you know, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. You know, when we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for hanging with us today. Hey, we have a special treat for you. After this segment, we're going to have Twila Brase with CCH Freedom on to talk about all of the issues that you need to know surrounding your health care freedom and to help you be a good steward of those decisions regarding your health care. So we are going to be cutting our YouTube feed after this segment. So before Twila comes on, YouTube isn't a big Twila fan. They're not near as big of a fan as we are. So,
that's right.
So make sure that you know how to continue watching. You can do that on Facebook. You can do that on Rumble. Rumble's probably a better option. Or the best option is our phone app. Make sure that you have that because, you know, as a stewardship ministry, we are always evaluating our stewardship, and part of our stewardship is to determine, you know, which outlets we're on, you know, how big of a reach that we're having, how big of an impact we're having, and how many people we can serve. So sometimes we are no longer on the station or the outlet that you're used to watching us on, but you can always have us with you if you get our phone app. So just visit your app store to do that. Rapid Fire Friday. Why don't we
Let's do it.
knock out some questions?
Yep. Starting here with Robin. Shanna, 60 years old. Robin is saying, I probably asked and answered this before, but if a CD is maturing in your in your portfolio, is it considered new money to invest? And if so, is there nothing in the needed sector available that we should just put back into our CD for a time? 60 years old. Shanna, what do you think? Excuse me.
Yeah. So the portfolio tracker tool is your friend here. That's going to be the best resource that we have to help you figure out what to do with it. And so when a CD comes due, as you're updating your portfolio tracker, what's likely going to happen is when that CD comes due, the proceeds from the CD and the interest goes into your cash. So now when you look at your output page, you're going to be a lot heavier in cash than in any of your other areas. I would suspect that at this time, when a CD comes due, you're probably still going to be light in the fixed income area. So I would continue, at least for the time being, this is very time specific, but for the time being, I would probably continue that CD ladder route. So you're probably going to be looking for a 2-year CD or treasury bill. You also have the other options of the other fixed income investments as well.
Awesome. Next one's Keith, 77 years old. In 2022, Keith says, I purchased 7 shares of TE1 at a price between $520 per share or so. May of 2024, I sold 5 shares for almost $1,400 per share. Then in July of this year, just recently, I noticed my account indicated I had 20 shares. I think it was an error. I called Fidelity to report the error. The agent said in mid-July, I had received a distribution of 18 shares. Now the price is $160. Do you have any idea what could have happened here, Shanna?
I sure do, Keith. What you described is what's known as a stock split. So that particular stock had a 10-for-1 split. So you end up with more shares at a lower share price. A lot of times companies will do splits because there's a perceived notion in the investment community that it's easier to buy or it's better to buy shares of stock that have a lower price. But, it really doesn't matter because on the date that it takes place, you have the same value. Whether you had 100 shares or 10 shares, the price is going to correspond accordingly. So the value's the same on one day when you have the 10 shares as when you have the 100 shares. You're still going to have the total value is going to be the same. So that's what happened here. You can see, as you mentioned in your example, the share price got up to $1,400 a shares where you sold it at one point. So what happens is you end up with more shares at a lower price, but the value should have remained comparable. So I don't know why they couldn't just tell you it was a stock split rather than you got a distribution of 18 shares. So I hope that explanation helps a little bit.
Yep. Next one up is Kelly, 51 years old, saying, Shanna, 51, I've consistently contributed to my 401k with my employer, which is managed by Schwab. All the assets are biblically responsible, according to FISM. I realized recently I'm writing IRS max contributions. I recently opened a Fidelity brokerage account to fill out my asset allocation. I can't get through Schwab. I recall you suggested a strategy in purchasing different types of assets given these 2 account types. What was that strategy?
Yeah, so it's sort of a tax-located strategy, and it has to do with the taxability of the different types of accounts. So your 401k account, if it's a traditional, it's all pre-tax money that's going in there. And a 401k is known as a qualified account because it qualifies for special tax treatment because the government says so. So the government passed legislation way back in the 70s that created 401k accounts, and it allows you to put money in on a pre-tax basis, which means that you don't pay taxes on the money that you put in. So you have tax savings today, but you're going to pay taxes on not only the money that you put in, but all of the earnings that you've accumulated at some point in the future whenever you take the money out. Now, the problem with that for me is that we don't know what that tax rate's going to be in the future. Now, it worked out well for people who started in the 70s and are taking money out now because taxes were higher back then than they are today. They're lower today. in the future, I think taxes are going to be higher than what they are today just because of the amount of debt that our country has accumulated and the way that they are spending, running close to $2 trillion deficit, spending $2 trillion a year, more than what they're bringing in. So the government doesn't make money, they only appropriate money. So we, the people, have given them the ability to collect taxes from us and then to spend that money for our benefit. Won't go down that rabbit trail today, but because of the mismanagement of our finances of this country, I think taxes are going to have to be higher in the future than what they are today. So I think it's a really great idea that you're doing this, that you're, even if you are putting in the max into your 401k plan, I'm glad that you can't put any more in because I want to see you diversify the types of accounts that you have. So the brokerage account that you've opened with Schwab is going to be a taxable account. So, you want to be smart about the taxes there because, if you have capital gains, if you sell shares for a higher price, you're going to have to pay a capital gains tax. And then you're also going to have to pay tax on the dividends and interest that you earn in that account as well. So ETFs tend to be a little bit more tax efficient than, say, mutual funds. So there's a part most likely in your asset allocation where you're going to use some ETFs. It would be a good idea to do that outside in your non-qualified type of brokerage account that you open with Fidelity than rather than using them inside. There's nothing wrong with using them inside a 401k or an IRA, but it just gives you a little bit more tax control. The other thing, too, is because you're going to have to pay taxes on whatever you're growing inside your 401k at some point in the future when taxes are probably going to be higher, it would make more sense to have some of your more aggressive investments outside in your investment account. Yes, if you make money, you're going to have to pay capital gains tax, whereas you can avoid them or just kick the can down the road in the 401k plan. But, it's not such a bad thing to have to pay capital gains taxes because guess what? That means that you made money. So,
amen.
Hope that explains the difference a little bit.
Yeah, good stuff, Shana. Ed's up next. Ed's been a partner since 2015. Ed, thank you for your longtime partnership, brother. Said, I never really got my portfolio allocated properly. I am partially allocated based on the Timothy plan model that was for my age at the time. Now, I just turned 64 recently, and I want to get the allocations right using one of the Timothy models. Should I use the one for 64 or the one for 65 into retirement? Thanks so much for all you do. What do you think, Shana?
Yeah, so there's not going to be a whole lot of difference between those two models, but I would say it depends more on your risk tolerance and the time you have from retirement than it does on your actual age. Because, I know some 64-year-olds that are working and they plan to keep working for as long as they possibly can. So they're not going to be in a position where they're going to need to be taking income out of the portfolio soon. The 65 into retirement model assumes that you're retiring at age 65. So if that's the case, then I would probably allocate toward that one. If it's not the case, if you have more years to work that you have to work or want to work, then, and your risk tolerance is a little bit greater, you could go with some of the younger models.
Awesome, Shanna. Brent's up next. Brent's a new partner, by the way, 34 years old, and he's saying, I'm trying to figure out if I should open a Roth IRA or a self 401k. I own my business as an S-Corp, and I could invest, I think, $20,000 in the 401k each year and then write it off before taxes. I'm really trying to figure out the best method for investing and making sense from a tax perspective as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of things that I saw in that question. I hope I can remember them all as I'm answering here. So one of the things that you want to consider is that that solo 401ks. I don't know if you're the only employee in your S corp or not, but solo 401ks can be kind of expensive to set up and maintain. So you want to take that into consideration. Also, if you do have employees, if you set up a 401k plan, not only are you going to have the ability to put money in and make a match, but you're also going to have to do that for your employees. So you have to make sure that that's a cost that you're, an expense. And it's a great thing if you can offer matching contributions to employees and help them, with their stewardship and putting money back for the future. So those are two things that you want to consider. A lot of times, too, if you do a solo K, your investment options may be limited. You may have to do it with a certain fund family or something like that, and you may not have the ability to continue being biblically responsible in the 401k plan. And then as far as a Roth goes, being an S corp, and I would imagine that you probably set up an S corp to be able to control your tax liability a little bit more. So if you're able to do that, you have to make sure first that you qualify to be able to do a Roth, because there's an income limit for that based on whether you're single or married. You'll make sure you want to look that up. Just exploring that option may take that option off the table for you. So, you want to make sure that you have your money spread around in different kind of accounts. If you're in a really high tax bracket, it might make some sense to do some pre-tax contributions. If you can do a Roth, it would certainly make some sense to do that. You won't save on taxes today, but you will potentially in the future when taxes are probably higher. And then don't discount the good old just investment account that you got to pay taxes along the way, but that's not the worst thing in the world. Well, folks, if you listen on a station that only carries the 30-minute version of the show, we wish you a farewell. If you're listening on YouTube, swap over to another form of broadcast method. For the rest of you, we're going to see. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Every time I turn on the news, I get so frustrated. When I read a headline, it's obvious they're just trying to manipulate me for clicks and views. I just want to stay informed about what's going on without all the drama and opinions. I knew I needed to find an alternative, and thankfully I found FISM News. They keep the viewers up to date with all the latest news without the extra noise. Check them out by going to fismnews.tv. That's fismnews.tv.
As of this year, more than 1,000 school districts have adopted gender non-conforming policies that intentionally keep parents in the dark about their kids' gender identities. To make matters worse, the American Bible Society now reports Bible reading is at an all-time low. We can't hide from the issues facing our country anymore. The undeniable truth is we're in a culture war, and we must be engaged. For over the last 25 years, Financial Issues has stood as a leader of biblically responsible investing, encouraging the body of Christ to keep funds out of companies that dishonor God. We call that defunding the darkness. We're at the forefront of the fight, helping you not only with your finances, but advocating for truth and godly wisdom. Run the race with us as we press forward together. For more information, go to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
As a member of Samaritan Ministries, your monthly share is a gift that goes directly to a real person in need. While that share takes care of the financial portion of a need, medical needs are complex and include the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects as well. While the financial gift is important, if we stop there, we miss an opportunity to minister to the whole need of our brother or sister. When you faithfully pray and send a note of encouragement and scripture along with your share, those words become a vessel of God's continued healing and blessing on the receiver. And the impact it has is immeasurable, bringing glory to God and provision and unity to His church. Glorify God with your health care. Send a note this month.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. It is great to be here with you all today. Got a special treat for you coming up here. We've got Twila Brase, the president and co-founder of CCH Freedom, on with me. It's been a while since we've had Twila on, and we're always so thrilled to have her. Twila, welcome back. Thanks for joining me on the show today. It's good to see you.
Well, it's so good to be here. Thanks so much, Seth.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Let's start off, Twila. I know you guys have an upcoming event, a fundraising gala this October. Let's get a little bit out ahead of this. Can you tell our audience what this event is and how they can learn more?
Sure. Yeah, it's called Physician on Fire, and we have Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, an MD out of Texas, who is the one who filed the successful lawsuit against the FDA. So she was the one that the judges said she was the only one withstanding in the lawsuit, and she won in March. And so she will be our keynote speaker, and she will be talking about what it was like to file a lawsuit against the government and then win. So it's really hard to win against the government, but she actually did it. She's also part of our Wedge of Health Freedom. So she is a cash-based doctor who doesn't, take orders from anybody else except herself and the patient. And so we're very glad to have her. So it is Thursday, October 3rd, and it is an evening event. It is a fundraising event for our organization, and we would love to have people come. All the information is on our website at cchfreedom.org, cchfreedom.org. And we do have some people already coming from out of the state. Excuse me. So, your listeners coming would be just great, and then I get to meet.
It's awesome, Twila. And tell us where this is. Is this in your home state up in Minnesota?
Yes, it's very close to the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. So the address is Minneapolis, but it's not anywhere near downtown Minneapolis. And so, it's just probably 10 minutes from the airport.
Great. Awesome. CCHfreedom.org is where people can get more information on that, Twila, cchfreedom.org. Awesome.
That's right.
And one more thing for you, Twila, with what you had mentioned there. You had mentioned the Wedge. I know we have some new members of our audience. Could you remind them what the Wedge is?
Oh, sure. The Wedge of Health Freedom is our online directory of cash-based practices. We have almost 500. We also have cash-based pharmacies, dentists, and surgeons and surgery centers in there. And then eventually we hope this will be the foundation of a brand new parallel healthcare system of freedom across the country.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Twila. Well, let's get into, obviously, this is an important year here, 2024, and beginning with the election, what insight do you have as to the potential healthcare landscape change that could happen if Trump and Vance were to retake the Oval Office in 2024? What changes could you potentially see?
Well, I think we would see some things that Trump did would come back because Biden got rid of them. Things like short-term, limited duration policies for people who don't have a lot of money but do want coverage. So this was a really good idea that Biden essentially got rid of. I think we would also see, what we did for Medicare was get an opt-out from President Trump through an executive order, and COVID intervened, and then he didn't get reelected, and Biden rescinded the executive order. And what your listeners may or may not recall is that the Clintons in 1993 tied Medicare enrollment with Social Security benefits and said if you don't enroll in Medicare, you can't have your Social Security benefits. This is not a law, not a rule, not a nothing, except their initiative. And so we did get that executive order. It took us 3 years to get it, and we would try to get it done in the very first year. So there would be 3 years of people being able to opt out, those who want to. Now, a lot of people won't want to, but we need to open the door, because while there is Medicare and while you cannot get out of it, there can be no health freedom in this country. People don't understand that. I think we will also see Trump bring back his freedom of conscience for healthcare workers that Biden essentially decimated. We would stop Kamala Harris's plan for Medicare for all, And we would probably stop all of the money going for illegal immigrants, the Medicare and Medicaid enrollment that they're letting illegals do. And so I think we would stop that as well. I think there's lots of other things too. The thing we don't know about Vance is that he's a venture capitalist, and he has his fingers in a lot of the healthcare industry, from data to pharma to devices. And what we can hope is that he really believes in the free market, not in a collaborative agreement between government and business, to impose things on the American public that both the business and the government want. So, I guess we would see where that would go.
Yeah, definitely. So seems like, and this is not a promotion or condemnation of either candidate, but it seems like one, method seems much more freedom-based and the other one not so much. Twila, regardless of what happens in the 2024 election, in your opinion, what must the next president of this country do to address some of these issues that we've been having in the healthcare sector?
Well, like I said, we definitely have to allow people to get out of Medicare. And one of the reasons that I will say that is because in 2036, it will only be able to pay 89% of its bills. And that means probably that we're just going to move into a more frequent rationing of care for anybody who is in Medicare, particularly through Medicare Advantage. We are, by the way, coming out with a handbook on Medicare that people might find very useful once it gets out. It won't be until fall. But the other thing is we've got to get back to privacy, because he who holds the data makes the rules. And so really for the Trump administration, we wouldn't get it out of a Kamala administration, but out of a Trump administration, for there to be the right to privacy being reinstalled. We could even get rid of the HIPAA regulation. There's no reason we have to have HIPAA in there. It's a violation. It's a constitutional violation. It's certainly a privacy violation. We just withdraw that amendment. It would be a complete upheaval in the country, because so many people are getting so much data on all of us because they have this authority through this regulation, but it should be gotten rid of. So, to set people free to have real insurance, that's the other one. The Affordable Care Act says you can't have catastrophic coverage if you're over the age of 29. Well, that should never be. So we either have to undo that, or we have to basically say, notwithstanding that particular law, we are bringing back real health insurance. And the people who want to opt out of Medicare, and there are people who want to opt out of Medicare because they know they want to get to their secondary insurance, which is far better coverage. They would love to have also the option of a real health insurance policy that's affordable and only for insurable events, because that makes it really affordable, because most of us don't have insurable events. Most of us have routine and minor care, and Medicare is going to be 80 million people. Imagine the market for real insurance that could be built. So I think that those are the kind of things that any president should do to keep freedom in this country.
Well said, Twila. Speaking of Medicare, we just passed an anniversary for the passage of Medicare. I believe it's 59 years earlier this week, July 30th. Could you speak to this for just a moment, Twila? Obviously, there's a lot of problems with Medicare. What are the impacts of this particular government entity, and what needs to be done to fix the issues that it seems like Medicare has failed to fix?
So I give a presentation, and I'd love for any of your people who have a group that they would like me to talk to do an invitation. But I do this one presentation called 12 Facts to Expose Dangerous Healthcare Myths. And one of those facts is about Medicare. And so I just give the details about Medicare. So, for instance, there are 67 million people in Medicare today. By 2033, there will be 70 million people. And then just 3 years later, it will only be able to pay 89% of its bills. And in 2022, Medicare paid $905 billion to cover people in Medicare. Now, if it could have only paid 89% of its bills, that would have meant that $99.55 billion would not have been paid. So who would pay that? And what does that mean for physicians deciding to either leave Medicare or not take Medicare patients? Or, what does that mean for the future? So there needs to be an escape route from Medicare. There needs to be something for the young and for those who are not dependent anymore on Medicare, and that's real insurance. So the other thing it means is that the government is trying to push everybody into Medicare Advantage, which the federal government itself is saying that it is rationing care to seniors, medically necessary care, Medicare approved care is being rationed to seniors. And this is very lucrative for the health plans that are doing this, because they just deny and deny and deny. And then if you appeal, 75% of the time they will overturn. But only 1% of the time does anybody who is denied ever appeal. And that's because it's a burdensome process. So again, very lucrative for the health plans who just deny, and then see who has the wherewithal, who has the ability, who isn't sick enough that they can actually appeal. And okay, then we'll give them the care. But the rest of the time, we just keep the money.
Twila, that's why we have you guys, and we're so grateful for you. Folks, cchfreedom.org, cchfreedom.org. If you want Twila to come and speak at an event, if you've got something that you feel like she could be able to do that for, that'd be a great thing to do as well. And make sure to check out that event that they have coming up, the fundraising gala in October. Twila, we always run out of time. Such a bummer to have to say goodbye, but I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to the next time that we get to do it, Twila. We'll be right back, folks, after this break. Stick with us.
In a world where financial decisions can feel overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But what if there is a way to align your financial goals with your deepest values? Financial Issues has helped us navigate the complex world of finance through a biblical lens. By prioritizing and investing in a way that honors God, Financial Issues has empowered us to focus on what truly matters: our family, our faith, and our future. With Financial Issues by our side, we can invest knowing that our financial decisions are in line with our values. Take the first step today and become a Financial Issues partner to access rich online resources, training tools, and guidance for biblically responsible investing. Head over to financialissues.org and learn how to invest your money in a way that honors God. That's financialissues.org.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks for joining us today, folks. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Twila. I always love when she comes on the program with me. She brings some great information. And, you know, she did mention the wedge. I know some of you on the chat had said that you found some primary care physicians through the wedge. That's awesome. So check that out at cchfreedom.org. And if you're looking for other resources for your health freedom, of course, one of our sponsors here at the ministry is Samaritan Ministries. So if you're looking for kind of that health sharing model that replaces traditional health insurance, check them out, SamaritanMinistries.org. You can find their link on our website. If you go to the main page, there's a Samaritan Ministries banner that flashes by. Just click on that. You can also call them as well if you'd like. SamaritanMinistries.org. Great place to go for you. Hey, I wanted to remind you all, mark your calendars, please. Everybody listen up. Mark your calendars. We have a partner conference call August 29th. I believe that is a Thursday. Thursday, August 29th. Shana had sent a message out, I believe it was last week. So please mark your calendars. It's a little bit of a ways away, but I wanted to let you all know. Don't miss that conference call. Thursday, August 29th. It's at the end of this month in about 4 weeks. But mark your calendars, please, for that conference call. You don't want to miss it. That is one of the top benefits of being a partner, is getting to join those conference calls. Take a quick look here at what the markets did yesterday. So they had a magnificent Wednesday, folks, and a solid start to Thursday as we were on the air. But then after we got off the air, they crashed back to earth. Midday Thursday with a lot of sell-offs. By mid-afternoon, all three indices were well more than a percentage point in the negative. The Dow and the S&P all but erased their Wednesday gains, and the NASDAQ came pretty close to erasing its as well. By late afternoon, major indices were actually on pace for one of the worst days of the year, and by the end of the day, yesterday, the Dow Jones was down about 1.2%. The S&P 500 was down about 1.4%, and the NASDAQ was down almost 2.5 percentage points. The pre-markets this morning still were in the negative as well, following somewhat of a disappointing earnings report from the Magnificent Seven heavy hitter Amazon, which we may get to later on if we have time for that. As the markets have opened, let me check real quick to see what they're looking like right now. Everything is in negative territory, pretty similar to how it finished yesterday. Dow Jones down a full percent, the S&P down a full 1.5%, and the NASDAQ is down, again, that same spot, almost 2.5 percentage points. So that's what we're looking like on the markets this morning, folks. We got the Ag Report coming up with Craig Haugaard, and then we'll talk more about what's going on in the economy. Thank you all for your prayers for Craig, by the way. He is recovering nicely, and he's got the Ag Report for our farmers and ranchers today. Here is Craig Haugaard.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for August 2nd. Corn was under a bit of pressure yesterday as the result of an overall weather pattern here in the U.S. that seems to be supporting an above trendline yield. Yesterday, a private analyst released a yield survey which projected a national average yield of 182.3 bushels per acre. That's 1.3 bushels above the trendline yield that the USDA has been using since February. As a result, December corn was a penny and a quarter lower, closing at $3.98.5 per bushel. Non-threatening extended weather forecasts for the U.S. soybean crop, combined with a slower than expected soybean export sales numbers, put the soybean market under some pressure in yesterday's trade. At the closing bell, November beans were 6 cents lower at $10.16.5. Wheat had a positive session as we saw Russian wheat prices climb from $1 to $2 per metric ton. Here in the U.S., exports are maintaining a pace that has them on track to exceed the USDA's projected annual export number. As a result, Minneapolis September wheat was 7 cents higher at $5.88.5. Kansas City rose by 5.5 cents to close at $5.54.5, and Chicago was 4 3/4 cents better at $5.32 per bushel. Cotton futures traded both sides before pushing down towards the recent lows. At the closing bell, December futures were 91 points lower at 68.08. Livestock futures gave us a mixed picture. October live cattle were $2.95 lower, $183.72.5 per hundredweight. September feeder cattle had a rough session, ending the day $5.30 lower, settling at $251.80 per hundred. And October lean hog futures rose. They were at $1.10 stronger, closing at $77.02.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures dropped down and touched the 20-day moving average, and at that point found a little bit of support and was able to bounce off the lows. They were still lower for the day. In fact, September futures closed down 25 points at 21.01. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Well, folks, I hope you're keeping an eye out as we're nearing election 2024. It seems, sadly, like election interference is already happening. Unfortunately, I saw a headline earlier this week. The GOP senators are investigating Google for omitting the failed Trump assassination search results. There's no low they won't go, according to GOP senators. Senator Roger Marshall announced Wednesday he's going to launch an investigation into Google for allegedly censoring information about the Trump assassination attempt on its search engine website. I don't know if any of you noticed this. Let me know in the chat. I tried searching it. It was pretty hidden. I mean, Google did a pretty bang-up job of trying to hide this thing. It really is shameful that this is still happening, but this is the world that we're living in, folks. You know, when big tech is unfortunately owned by the left, this is what's going to happen. So we need to pray that we will have fair and clean elections this year. I did want to share with you as we close our show and close the week a great Dan rant. The right balance of support and criticism of President Trump. I know you all know Dan loved the 45th president, and he had some great words to say in this clip. Here's Dan Celia to close out our show for today.
There is nothing this president could do or has done that would ever cause me to lose my support for this president. He is has already saved America from an unbelievable fate and will save America again in November from an unbelievable fate that could happen, I'm sure. And I'm going to support him through all of it. But that will never stop me from saying when he is wrong and what I wish he didn't say or didn't do, particularly around the economic environment and the market environment. That's the place that I live. And so I always want the freedom to be able to say the critical things. It doesn't mean I'm losing support for this president. It doesn't mean I've given up on this president. How can you give up on this president? I know people that gave up on him before he was elected that are all about him now, that finally came to their senses. I'm not about to do that. He's the only one. He's the only one that is going to be running for president that can move us forward and carry us forward as a nation so that we can maintain the great republic that God has given us. He's the only one. No matter what he does, he's the only one. So I understand that. But I appreciate those of you, there are some that don't, but I appreciate those of you that allow me and give me the grace and understanding to say something like, the president's wrong. The president's wrong about what he's doing with the Federal Reserve, and I'm afraid he's gonna live and be in office to regret it. And, you know, so I appreciate the people that understand me and give me the grace to say those things. You know, I sent something out on Twitter this morning. Do you follow me on Twitter? If you don't, you might want to check it out. And when I said it out, I hesitated. It's a two-part tweet. And when I sent it out, I really hesitated because I said, you know what? I'm going to lose followers. But I can't. I have to send it out because it's Twitter. And I copied the president on it because I'm hoping that he read it. Now, is he going to read it and criticize me? I don't think so. I don't think it sounded like I wasn't supporting him anymore at all. As a matter of fact, I tagged it with hashtag Trump 2020 landslide. So I didn't, you know, I hope he took it in the light in which it was intended. But I was critical about an article and an appointment that was made. And all I said though was, Mr. President, your base won this election for you, and your base is going to win the election for you in November. And just said, stick to your base. In other words, don't start trying to please anybody on the left. I'm not saying that this particular tweet, he was trying to please the left. I'm not saying that. But I had to wonder. And all I was saying is, don't start buying in to this stinking liberal media and these ridiculous polls that have a close race. This is not going to be a close race. You keep doing what you're doing, Mr. President. I didn't say all this, but it was what I was hoping and prayed that he would read into it. That just keep doing what you're doing. You know, it's promises made, promises kept, all the things that you have done. You don't ever need to kowtow to the left, no matter what the polls say. You're going to win this election. And that's all I was saying. Did I get criticism for it? Of course I did. I got clobbered. But it's okay. It's okay. But they're the people that read it and don't understand, didn't think about where I was coming from. I wasn't coming from a place of not supporting the president. I was coming from a place of, I love this president. And in love, I want to tell him, please don't do this. Don't go down that road. And I didn't say he was going down that road. I just made an inference that if you are going down that road, stop. You don't need to.
Well, those words from 2020 apply with equal power to 2024. Folks, it was a great Rapid Fire Friday and a great week. I hope you'll join us next week, and I hope that you'll have a blessed day of worship on Sunday. Until next time, remember, it is all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money God has given to us. God bless you all. Lord willing, we'll see you on Monday for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.